more of the people-oriented issues and procedure and work process-oriented issues associated with cybersecurity today. Implementing, measuring the success of, and sustaining a good cybersecurity program and culture. And we have a couple of great speakers and panelists. I just have a few introductory slides. So end users are pretty challenged, but I think the message is, let's not panic. But if you talk to any of the end users here, I think they'll tell you they're resource strapped. Functions are becoming, in many ways, what I've seen is they're becoming more centralized or moving to remote management, remote monitoring type of functions in end user organizations. Individuals are saddled with a broader scope of responsibilities than they had before because of this problem. And this shrinking people resource problem, and is kind of compounded by the convergence of this, information technology with operational technology and this additional issue of, Internet of Things or industrial Internet of Things. So it can make it really hard to form a cohesive cybersecurity strategy. I think we hear a lot from a lot of the leading edge companies, while we're here this week, and they tend to do a really good job, I think. Although sometimes if you ask them, they'll tell you, well, I don't know if we're so far along. But the thing that concerns me personally is a lot of the small to medium-sized companies out there that are even more strapped for resources, and what can they do, to develop a successful cybersecurity organization. One of the things we've always recommended at ARC is to take a Six Sigma approach to what you're doing. So that's define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. I think that applies to cybersecurity as well. But you can't control what you can't measure, right? So it's important to define your cybersecurity organization, measuring its effectiveness, as a foundation for improvement. And we also have a cybersecurity maturity model, which you probably saw a couple of times yesterday if you were in the cybersecurity workshop, and again today. A very, very solid, maturity model that sort of starts, as Sid was saying yesterday, with a lock the doors, kind of an approach all the way up to the more sophisticated, anticipatory or proactive cybersecurity strategy where you're implementing things like anomaly and breach detection and threat intelligence. And of course, that requires resources in the organization, right? So a lock the doors approach. Maybe you just need some support from your ICS supplier or some kind of a cyber service provider. But as you move up the chain to a more sophisticated strategy in the maturity model, you're going to need full-time ICS cyber operations group and expertise. And that can be a real challenge these days, with the people issues that we have. And it's not just a technology problem, it's a procedural problem, it's a process problem. What kind of work processes do you have in place? So this picture I have right here is actually, you guys probably heard of Trisis and Triton or Hatman, the many named process safety system malware that was reported back in December. So what this is actually a key switch on a Triconix safety system. So usually in some of these older Triconix systems, I'm not sure if the brand new systems have these, but you have to turn the key to program mode in order to be able to program the system. And in the case of this incident with Trisis malware, that key switch was left in program mode while the plant was in operation. So not what I would call a best practice, as far as locking your safety system down, and certainly not from a cybersecurity perspective. So I think, if you make things idiot-proof, God, of course, is going to make an improved idiot to come along and do something to screw it up. And a lot of these are simple things, right? And I don't think, if you leave here this week and go back to your plant, you don't necessarily have to spend millions of dollars, to make some steps to improve things in your plant from a cybersecurity perspective. And I think this, this is one example. Also, going back to that topic of converging IT, OT, and IIoT, we don't see a lot of integrated cybersecurity strategy around these different islands of functionality that exist right now. The ICS world, I think as we saw in the last session, right, it was a good contrast between, You had somebody who was very firmly in the kind of oil and gas, ICS world who, had one set of standards, and somebody in the power industry that had another set of standards, and, IT tends to have their own way of doing things, and industrial Internet of Things, as Eric Kosman characterized yesterday, is kind of like the Wild West, right now in terms of cybersecurity. So, hopefully we can move to a more unified and integrated strategy for cybersecurity that's going to encompass all of these things. And hopefully it won't take too long. So I don't want to take up any more time than I have to.